For them, they send us what they built: motor vehicles, machinery, iron and steel, and finished chemicals. This is precisely why investment in local vehicle assembly matters. When we assemble vehicles here in Kenya and progressively enhance our local content and finally produce them here in Kenya, we keep the value here at home, and we begin to balance a trade account with our partners around the world that has forever been against us. That is how we close the trade gap, not by buying less, but by building more and adding value of what we produce here in Kenya. That is how an economy becomes competitive. And what is the difference? And that is the difference between a nation that merely consumes and a nation that produces. Early this morning, I was having a conversation with coffee farmers in Kirinyaga, again on the same subject, that now that we have cleaned up the coffee production that was riddled with brokers and middlemen and conmen and all manner of characters, and that today we have a clearer mechanism of our farmers benefiting from what they do in coffee. We increased our participation as government in the agriculture space. We reduced the prices of fertilizer from what was then about 7,000 a 50-kilogram bag to 2,500. I'm very happy that in this year's budget, which I will be signing tomorrow morning, we have added the money that will go into supporting farmers to access farm inputs, fertilizer, seeds, and chemicals by up to 18 billion Kenya shillings. The conversation we were having with the coffee farmers is that now that we are producing more and that we have a target to move our production from 50,000 metric tons, that is today 52,000. In the next 3 years, we want to produce 150,000 metric tons. We want to plant on 100,000 acres in the next 3 years. We have provided 2 billion shillings to buy additional seedlings. Once we have cleaned up that space, today we are seeing earnings of coffee that have moved from an average of 30 or 50 shillings a kilo to today 120 and 150 shillings a kilo. But that's not enough. We need to move earnings for farmers to between 200 and 250. And that will only happen if we do value addition. The same thing we are discussing with this automobile space, that we need to do more with our labor. We need to do more with our value. We need to add value to what we use, what we consume. And that is why this meeting, as has been said, is a very significant meeting. It has not only opened new partnership with our friends in Japan, but it has also is historic because this is the very first time the government of Kenya is accessing the Japanese market with a samurai bond. It has never happened before. Not more than 2 countries in Africa have traveled this journey. And it speaks to our strategy to diversify our sources of funding for the big program we have for the transformation of our nation. For us to move this country to a first world country, which we must in our generation, we have to think outside the box. Traditional sources of financing cannot suffice for us to move this country to the next level. That is why we are combining domestic mobilization of resources with alternative sources of foreign financing and diversification to eliminate risk to our economy. That is a strategy that I committed myself to achieve.